If you bought a wrench labeled Made in USA last year, there is a better than 8 in 10 chance the head was forged in China. If you bought a pair of boots stamped American made, the leather may have crossed 2 oceans before it crossed your doorstep. And if you bought an appliance with a flag on the box and the words "Assembled in America," you may have paid a 30% premium for a machine whose motor, electronics, and structural components were manufactured in Mexico or Vietnam. You are not being paranoid. You are being defrauded. And the mechanism that makes that fraud legal and profitable is hiding in plain sight inside 4 words on a label. In this investigation, we are going to expose the specific regulatory loophole that allows corporations to stamp American flags on foreign-sourced products, the engineering deceptions buried inside the most trusted brand names and tools, appliances, and footwear, and the exact buying strategy that lets you escape the trap entirely. The system that produces this fraud did not appear overnight. It was built deliberately over decades by corporations that understood one thing with absolute clarity. The words "Made in USA" command a price premium. Across consumer goods categories, that premium runs between 20 and 50%. A $50 hammer carrying a domestic origin claim sells against a $25 import sitting on the same shelf. The label is doing 30% of the work, maybe more. So the first question any corporation asks is not how to manufacture in America. It is how to manufacture the label. The Federal Trade Commission has a rule for this. It is called the All or Virtually All Standard, codified under the Made in USA Labeling Rule, 16 CFR 323. The rule states that an unqualified Made in USA claim requires final assembly in the United States, all significant processing in the United States, and all or virtually all ingredients or components made and sourced in the United States. They call this consumer protection. We call it a door left deliberately open, because the FTC defines all or virtually all using no specific percentage threshold. There is no bright line at 90% domestic content, no automatic disqualification at 60%. The agency applies a multi-factor test weighing manufacturing costs, direct labor, overhead, and something they call remoteness. How many production steps a foreign component is from the finished product. This is where the lawyers earn their fees. Here is how a corporation threads that needle. They move the forging, the casting, the stamping, the injection molding, the circuit board fabrication, everything requiring expensive skilled labor and equipment, to China or Vietnam. They ship the components to a domestic facility. American workers earning $20 to $25 an hour bolt those components together. That assembly step is real. It is documented. It is photographed for the marketing department. And it becomes the legal basis for the flag on the box. They call this domestic manufacturing. We call it American gift wrapping on a foreign-made product. But the business model is only half the problem. The specific components they are hiding and what they replaced are worse. Start with Stanley Black & Decker. In 2017, the corporation acquired the Craftsman brand from Sears for $900 million. That acquisition came with a name that 3 generations of American tradespeople trusted unconditionally. The corporation's own SEC filings document a sourcing footprint heavily weighted toward Asia. What is notable about the Craftsman acquisition is what preceded it. Stanley Black & Decker's own CEO acknowledged that under Sears, the tools had migrated from made in America to virtually everything being made in China and Mexico. The company announced a goal of bringing 70% of Craftsman production back to the United States, which tells you where production actually stood at the time of acquisition. When a corporation announces a 70% domestic production target, it is telling you that domestic production was not the starting point. It was the destination they had not yet reached. Forging is the process that aligns the grain structure of metal, creating the strength that lets a wrench torque a fastened bolt without rounding or cracking. When forging moves offshore and is replaced with cast or stamped foreign steel, you change the physical performance of the tool. You do not change the label. The $50 Craftsman hammer you bought carries a head that may have been produced in a foreign facility, shipped to a domestic assembly point, and had a handle fitted by an American worker. That handle fitting is the manufacturing that justifies the claim. Now look at Whirlpool, the parent company of KitchenAid and Maytag. Available reporting indicates that significant portions of parts are sourced from Mexico and China, with domestic content by value running well below what the brand's marketing implies. These are washers and dryers sold under names like Maytag, a brand whose entire marketing identity for decades was built on American durability. The motor inside that machine, the electronic control board, the structural components, sourced overseas. The final assembly, bolted together in a domestic plant. Assembled in USA, the flag earns its place on the carton. The FTC documented a case that illustrates the system at its most naked. A company imported belt straps from overseas and affixed the buckles in the United States. Then they labeled the product Made in USA from Global Materials. The agency ruled that affixing a buckle was a de minimis finishing step, meaning it was so minimal it could not support the claim. The company had to change the label. But here is what that case reveals about the system. A company thought affixing a buckle was worth trying. They packaged it with enough qualified language, from Global Materials, to create ambiguity. And the only reason they got caught is because the FTC happened to inspect that specific product. In July of 2025, the FTC sent warning letters to Americana Liberty, a flagpole retailer, to Oak Street Manufacturing, a footwear company, to Pro Sports Group, a football equipment company, to USA Big Mountain Paper. The agency also sent letters to Amazon and Walmart identifying third-party sellers on those platforms making deceptive domestic origin claims. Warning letters, not fines, not injunctions, letters. Since finalizing the Made in USA labeling rule in 2021, the FTC has brought more than 11 enforcement actions in this category. Total penalties have exceeded $15 million. A penalty against the Stanley Works, the predecessor company to Stanley Black & Decker, was $205,000 for falsely claiming its ratchets were made in the USA. These numbers sound significant until you run them against the revenue lines of the companies involved. A $200,000 penalty is a rounding error in the marketing budget of a corporation selling tools at a 30% Patriot premium. The math still works in their favor. The enforcement does not break the economics of the fraud. It is a cost of doing business. Meanwhile, audits on products making domestic origin claims have found that the majority fail to meet the FTC's actual standard. The FTC's own enforcement posture suggests that the number of products caught is only a fraction of those that would fail to qualify if inspected. That gap between what is caught and what is failing tells you everything about the enforcement posture. And that is just the first layer of the scam. When the product fails and you go looking for accountability, you find the second wall. The warranty documents are written by the same lawyers who wrote the label strategy. The arbitration clauses remove your access to class action litigation. The customer service infrastructure is designed to outlast your patience, not solve your problem. More fundamentally, the repair economics are engineered to close one door and open another. The door to a new purchase. When a foreign-sourced control board on a Whirlpool family washer fails, the replacement part costs between $200 and $400. On an $800 machine that is 5 years old, the repair math is designed to point you back to the showroom floor, where another flag is waiting on another box. They want you to calculate the repair cost and buy new. They want the label to reset your trust. They want 40 years of brand equity to do the work that 40 years of engineering integrity once did. This is not an accident. This is inventory management. So if the market is structured against you, does that mean you accept the loss? No. It means you stop shopping like a consumer and start thinking like an auditor. The same mechanical specificity that exposes the fraud also points directly to the alternatives. Liberty Tabletop makes flatware in Sherrill, New York. The company was founded by the people who now run it, and it has remained independently operated. Their product is made from 1810 stainless steel sourced from domestic mills. A set costs approximately $100 and carries a lifetime warranty. Spread that cost across 20 years of daily use, and you are paying $5 per year. Disposable import flatware, replaced every 3 to 4 years, runs $17 per year on the same math. The only calculation that matters is the one that runs the full timeline. Red Wing boots are made in Minnesota. The leather comes from their own tannery using hide sourced from the American food industry. Red Wing is a family-owned company in operation since 1905. A pair costs approximately $300 and can be resold through the company's boot care program when the sole wears. Your grandfather's Red Wings lasted 30 years. That is not nostalgia. That is the engineering consequence of using full-grain leather and a Goodyear welt construction that separates the upper from the sole mechanically, rather than with adhesive. When the sole wears, you replace the sole. The boot survives. Compare that to an American-made boot from a brand that sources its leather internationally and bonds the sole with imported adhesive. When the sole delaminates, and it will, the boot is a landfill. For hand tools, target the pre-acquisition era. Craftsman tools manufactured before the mid-2000s, before Sears began systematically offshoring production, were built to a different sourcing standard. They appear at estate sales, garage sales, and on used tool markets for a fraction of the cost of new tools carrying the same nameplate. The steel is different. The forging is different. The service life is different. A 40-year-old Craftsman combination wrench will out-torque a new one. That is a physics statement, not a preference. The rule is simple. Buy the brand before the buyout. Research the acquisition date. Buy behind it. For any product category, demand documentation. Not a flag. Not patriotic imagery. Not the phrase, assembled in USA with global components. Ask for the specific domestic content percentage by manufacturing cost. If the company cannot provide it, you have your answer. The label on the box is not information. It is a transaction. The corporation is selling you an emotion. Pride, confidence, loyalty. At a 30% markup, using a regulatory framework that was designed to protect consumers, but has been engineered into a mechanism for deceiving them. The FTC's standard exists. The enforcement is real, but insufficient. The loophole is documented, legal, and profitable. Stop buying the flag. Start buying the filing. Stop trusting the label. Start trusting the steel. Stop letting 40 years of brand history make your purchasing decision. That history ended the day the private equity firm signed the acquisition documents. Own things that were built to be owned. Demand proof, not patriotism. The only label that cannot lie is the one stamped to the metal itself.